I know. Hey everybody, Nikki Burnett here. This is Taste Life Nutrition Radio. I'm here with the amazing and beautiful Dr. Amber Hollis.
Hello everybody.
So, Taste Life Radio, what are we about? First things first, we are streaming live on KUHS Denver, the amazing radio station here locally and nationally. We are worldwide, headed up by Henry Archuleta. So today, though, we want to talk a little bit about, well, you can probably see behind me. We're going to talk about poop.
Yay! Let's talk about poop.
So it's actually, we're going to have a ton of fun with this, I think. But we want to talk first a little bit about what Taste Life Radio is about, because that's what is really important here, is what we're trying to do with this show. What we're really trying to do is bring the truth, right? Empower you to find your truth, and then kind of be able to figure out ways of sifting through so much misinformation and disinformation and just plain lies out there in the media, and you know, online. It's so frustrating, and we've all been there. We were both there. I mean, sometimes we're still there, but you know, that's why we went to school to do what we do, is so we could learn, so we could understand, so we could sift through for ourselves. And now we're sifting through for our loved ones, our patients, our clients, and you and anybody who's going to listen to us, whether they like it or not. So that's the focus here. But we want to have fun. We want to talk about things that maybe not everybody talks about, and we want to make life enjoyable. And we want to take the taboo out of poop.
Must be done.
It must
Somebody
be done.
has to do it.
So, but that's the thing. In our world, in the functional medicine, functional nutrition world, the gut is the key to health, right? And so a byproduct of the gut is poop. Mm-hmm. And it's life, and it's what it is. And it can tell us a lot of stories. Okay, so let's talk about what we're grateful for, and then we'll talk a little bit about you.
Sure.
And then we're just going to dive into shit.
All right. What are you grateful for today?
Man, I'm grateful for so many things. I'm really, you know what I'm grateful for? I have been working on, and if you've listened to this over the last few months, a course that I've been co-creating with Dr. Lynn and Dr. Sam. And they have I think their show's tomorrow, so they have a show on here as well. And we're finally launching. We have done a couple of challenges to kind of soft launch and have a little bit of fun with it, but we're at a point to where we are finally able to truly launch it and get it out there. And
Congratulations.
This has been pushing a year.
Oh my gosh.
9 months that we've been working on this.
Yeah.
And it's been fun and really flipping hard. But that's okay, because I've learned a ton. But what this course is it is really robust and comprehensive. And it is, again, kind of like the show. The point is to empower you to find your truth, who you are, what your body needs, why it needs it, and to really understand it. And it's mind, it's body, it's mindset, it's meditation, it's cognitive health. We dig a little bit into epigenetics. We talk about the microbiome. We help you understand all of these things, and we move through it day by day for 12 weeks so you can learn you. This isn't a generalized course. It's a course to help where you can mold it to your needs, not everybody else's needs, and not listening to what somebody else tells you you need.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's not the end all be all, right? If there are some pretty chronic conditions that you're dealing with, this is going to help. Probably, you may find that you need more help after that. That's great, but you have learned a huge chunk of what you need to know in order to help you at least start to control whatever that chronic condition might be. So that's what I'm grateful for.
Amazing.
Super excited.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, how about you?
Oh my gosh, I feel like there's a lot to be grateful for. So, to keep it somewhat short, I guess I'll say that I'm really grateful for my personal health right now. I know a lot of people are just struggling both physically and mentally through this whole COVID crisis. And I just feel so grateful that I don't feel really dragged down and bogged down. So to some extent, I feel like I can be a little bit of a rock and a sounding board for the people that I come into contact with that are just mentally and physically exhausted from this whole thing. So,
it is exhausting.
Yeah, I feel great. I feel, and I to some degree, I kind of feel bad for feeling great.
Don't feel bad.
But, right? I know it's a work in progress, but yeah, I'm just really grateful for my health and the fact that I can still, come and do stuff like this and be face to face with you, and yeah, just keep it simple today.
So I think that's great, because one of the things that we both try to focus on when it comes to health is the mental aspect, and it's not necessarily my strength, but there is a piece of my practice where I'm like, we need to work on mindset. We need to find balance. I know it's one of your strengths. You do that a lot in practice, and we all need to find that. But in my mind, you've been working on your own balance for so long, and I feel like I have too, that you're in a place where you're able to sort of as smoothly as possible kind of move through this. It's not necessarily smooth, but we all have our ups and downs with these things, but we're able to just kind of sit back and take it, instead of the anxiety reeling through our head, because I know that happens a lot. It's the what if, and telling yourself the stories and what's going to happen, and and that's the hard part. And the really terrible thing is you don't know what's going to happen, and so you just keep creating these stories that reel in your mind.
Right. And those can be very problematic. I mean, I think we actually talked about this the last time I was here. About how stress affects every part of the body, and we can definitely get into that today about how stress affects the gut, but it's really hard to not wonder about the future and think about what's going to happen, what's my business going to look like, what's the world going to look like. But instead, I mean, it might be blasphemous to say this, but can we just be excited and curious that really amazing change could be coming?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of how I like to see it, because otherwise we're just doing our immune system a big disservice by continuously worrying about the what ifs. It is not good. Negative thinking really does have an impact on not just your immune system, but your health overall. Everything.
Yeah. And so, those are the things, we're going to beat this drum, continue to beat this drum, but these are the things that we're not hearing in mainstream media and mainstream medicine, is taking control of your health, taking control of your mental and emotional health, and eating the right things, instead of being cooped up and drinking and eating like crazy. Let's consider that we need to flip that over and actually take that time to build our health, build our immune systems, build our mindset, meditate, do all of these things to allow us to thrive. We need to thrive in a time like this. We need to build our everything about us so we can get through it. And if we happen to get COVID, so you move through it. Lots of people are getting it, and I think most people are moving through it. And so I just can't help but to continue to say we have to focus on ourselves right now, and not focus on the craziness. Bring it in, take care of you, take care of your family, and if you do that, if everybody were to do that, then we start to build these little communities of health, and then it spreads and grows. And I just think that that's so important. This is a time to be selfish.
Absolutely. And for those of you or people that who are extremely overwhelmed by this, the best thing you can do, like Nikki said, is focus on yourself and your health, because that's how you're going to move through this. So that just brings us right back to the immune system and the gut, where most of it resides.
It does. Yeah. But first, we need to talk about you.
Oh, wow. What about me? So I am Amber Hollis. I'm a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and I bring a very functional medical approach into my practice, which can mean a lot of things, but not recently, but what I'm most excited about recently is just diving into some of the testing. So traditional Chinese medicine,
testing.
you don't need testing. We have pulse diagnosis.
Which is super cool too.
Right, we can tell a lot by reading the pulse and looking at the tongue and the eyes and the ears, and the body just gives you a wealth of information. And now I feel like lab testing just really brings this beautiful layer where you just now have a lot more details. So before, I can feel a pulse and look at a tongue and be like, wow, we've got a major digestive issue going on. And there's symptoms too. Some people are very aware of their digestive issues and others are not. And that's what the testing allows us to do. So I'm really merging these two medical systems that just fit so beautifully together, that provide so much information when people feel completely lost. So I'm really, really just passionate and inspired by what is available, the tools that are available to us now.
It is amazing. It is amazing. And, kind of hitting on labs, because if you haven't already noticed, we're super nerds about the labs, but they give us so much information, and a lot of them are a little bit different than what you find in your everyday allopathic medicine.
Sure, very different.
And so allopathic being, your primary care, your, Western medicine physician, which is not okay. I mean, which is fine, but it really, when it comes to trying to understand underlying causes to symptoms, instead of trying to cover up with drugs or pharmaceuticals or drugs, whatever it is that floats your boat. But instead of covering up the symptoms, the goal is to find the underlying cause.
Right.
And so we always run, kind of like your doctor would, a comprehensive metabolic panel. But it's much more extensive than your everyday comprehensive metabolic panel. Much more extensive.
And much more extensive, but also looking at it through a much more narrow lens, if you will. Like those lab tests, those reference ranges are provided by the lab, and it's an average of the people who come in. Well, who's going to the doctor typically? So you're getting reference ranges from basically a bunch of sick people or, random people who go in once a year for a checkup. So we look at it through a much more narrowed lens, which can help us detect either early onset or possibilities, maybe things that people don't even feel yet.
It's true. Yeah. So one of the ways I explain it to my clients is when we're looking at things that are outside of lab range, which is what you typically see on a lab report, we're looking at things that are potentially pathogenic. They could potentially be a problem. With the more narrow range, what we're typically looking at is red flags. And so you can take those red flags, you might have multiple red flags, and you start putting pieces of the puzzle together. If you see certain inflammatory markers elevated, and then you see eosinophil is elevated, then you start to put these things together and see what the pattern is telling you. And then we move into, and this is, we do this on, I do it on every one of my clients. I have clients, she has patients. I have to be very careful with that. But I do stool testing on everybody. It's a rare day that I'll work with somebody who I haven't done a stool test on, or if they maybe have had one, recently through somebody else, because it gives so much information.
Right. It doesn't just tell you what is going on in the gut necessarily. I mean, we are looking at inflammatory markers. We're looking at potential pathogens, parasites, different things that could be causing issues that you don't feel in your gut. When we think about gut problems, of course, we're thinking about constipation, diarrhea, stomach ache. We're thinking about the things that you feel in the digestive system. But what we don't realize is how much these little microbes or pathogens affect our entire body, from like headaches to acne to hormone issues to skin issues. I mean, you name it. And
thyroid dysfunction, brain fog, anxiety, depression, joint pain,
fatigue. I mean, any of these sound familiar? That you need a poop test.
Hello. Just go do a poop test.
You really have to dig into the details to find out what is going on. And it's just, it's just ridiculously important when we know, like Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut. So why is that not our first thought? It is our first thought, but like it needs to become more mainstream that we are looking at what's going on inside the gut, so that we can really get to the potential like root cause of people's issues. Because what's happening in mainstream medicine, and not to knock it, like it's an amazing emergency medical system, but for chronic problems, like this is not doing any good for people. So we really need to take a different approach and look at what is going on inside, rather than just, you know, going to the doctor and here's your prescription. That's not very helpful. I think we can all admit that. It might be helpful to some symptomatically, but you're not, your body isn't like, you know, you don't have a shortage of proton pump inhibitors, you know, for acid reflux. Like that's not the problem. You don't just slap medicine on it to fix it.
We could go into a rabbit hole with PPIs, right?
Oh my gosh.
I know. I do want to say something real quick though, just to kind of go back to the specific lab testing that we do. So there are a couple of companies that I've used in the past. There's one that I'm using now, and I just wanted to show you the report that I get. This is a 20-page front and back report from the company that I use, and I don't know if you've used them yet. Have you used them?
I just started with them. I've been using a different company that we've both been using.
They're all really good. And so what the thing that I want to make sure that is clear is you do a stool test through your allopathic physician. In most cases, it is giving a sample. What they're looking for is, you know, they're not looking for a lot of pathogens. They're not looking at the microbiome. They're not looking at good bugs, bad bugs, all of these things. It's also not, basically they're taking the sample and because you said dig in, they're digging in it under a microscope to look for eggs and pieces and parts of these bugs.
I mean, mostly things that are going to be causing you a lot of problems, like Giardia, C. diff, and stuff like that. There's probably like a handful, like maybe, I don't know, 5 things that I've seen when people bring their lab work to me, their stool test report from their doctor. I'm like, this is it?
It's pretty minimal.
We got to do this again.
It's pretty minimal, And so the tests that we do are, and if you've heard the term, you probably heard the term now because of the COVID testing, but PCR. So this is PCR testing. I believe all 3 that we've used in the past, that I've used in the past, are all PCR, at least for the most part. And this is looking at the genetics. So it picks up the genetics of what's in the gut, so your own genetics, and then all of the different bacteria, viruses, mold, worms again, amoebas. I mean, it's your good bugs, bad bugs, your opportunistic bugs, your pathogenic bugs. It is broad. And again, you know, you get a report from your primary care or your, you know, GI doc, whatever it might be. It's definitely not a 40-page report. And this is for every client or every patient. It's everything in here, and it gives so much. I mean, even neurotransmitters, neurotransmitter metabolites, and these amazing inflammatory markers. And we need to understanding that disease begins in the gut, and that inflammation can often, gut creates inflammation. You know, we also have, you know, sort of these cycles that, you know, what creates what. But then understanding that, I don't remember my point, except
don't you love that when that happens?
Man, it happens to me too much. Anyway, but you know, just understanding that all of these things are what can create the biggest issues, and we have to look at them all and look at the inflammatory markers. What I was going to say is your immune function. 70% of your immune function is your gut and your microbiome, and so we need to know the good bugs.
Right.
And we need to know if the good bugs have actually become too many,
right,
which are then opportunistic, which can then create problems also.
Right. It really does give you a really nice picture of the immune system. There's a marker that will look at the mucus layer, the first defense in the lining of the gut. It will tell you if that is high or low, and then you can fix that really easily. I just did I just saw that and it's still low. My immune system is a little bit lower.
Secretary IgA?
Yep, that's what we're talking about. It's a little bit low, but I doubled it within 2 weeks of treatment.
Amazing.
And then retested about a month later.
That's right, we were going to talk about
that.
We haven't talked about it yet. We're talking about it now.
So it's just, it goes to show that there's so many different things you can look at, and the immune system is one of my favorite, because if you see this marker being really, really high, you can't think, oh, this person has a really robust immune system. Yeah. It means that there's a war going on.
Yeah, it's an upregulated immune system. So too high is an upregulated immune system, and there's a problem, and then too low means it's really not functioning. I don't want to say at all, but it's having a really hard time.
Right.
One of the most interesting things that I love about, and I don't know if you heard what I said, it's called secretory IgA, and not to get too sciencey about it, but there are a lot of times that we feel like that we have sensitivities and we can't figure out what it is or why. And I'm going to use gluten as a starting point. But when we look at a test and we see that secretory IgA is low, like really low, and then we also have an anti-gliadin marker, which is kind of a sort of a broad gluten sensitivity marker, and we see that there are no gluten sensitivities, and this is getting a little much, but I just love it so much that what is actually happening is because the immune system is not functioning properly, that it doesn't recognize that there's a problem with gluten. So you're reacting to it, but it doesn't. You can't tell on that piece of paper that you're actually having a problem with it, because it's not, it's just not functioning properly.
Right, it's not being recognized by these little components called immunoglobulins, which is what it's, a portion of that, what it's testing. So we could get into the nitty gritty, but just to give you, I think, a baseline of all of the different things that we can look at. And when I'm sure you guys have heard that inflammation is the root cause of all disease. Okay, well, what is causing the inflammation? So we have to even dig a little bit deeper, but you can definitely see inflammation in the gastrointestinal labs that we're running.
Yeah. So going, with saying that, and I use this a lot now after you said it, but it's like acting, like that 5-year-old child, why?
Yes.
We're always asking why. Don't just assume that there's inflammation and you don't know why, and so you need to take anti-inflammatories, like Advil or something like that, right? So always ask why. If you have an infection, why? If you have leaky gut, which is going to show up on a lab test, why? Do you have anxiety? Why? It's inflammation. Why? You have an infection. Why? There's always you always have to keep going until you kind of, and you, a lot of times I tell my clients too that we may not be able to put a name on what's happening. I can put a name on the infection because it shows up on my lab report. But just because it's not a disease doesn't mean that it can't be repaired. Fixed.
Absolutely. And a lot of times it's not just one thing, right? Like it can, I like to look at it like this, and this is how I explain it to my patients. We're all born with a bucket, okay? And we're all born with different size buckets, and this bucket is basically our tolerance. How much can you handle? And so it could be that you've had a lot of stress. Maybe you've had a traumatic event, or lots of them, and it keeps piling this bucket. Then you're exposed to mold. Then you go to Mexico and you get food poisoning. And then you're in an unhappy marriage. And then you get bit by a tick. Like all of these things. And then there's always that straw that broke the camel's back. Not one more drop of water can fit in this bucket. Then it explodes. So sometimes you can't pinpoint just one thing. It is so important to realize that all of these different things, a lot of them are within your control, and that's cool. Like you got to look at your bucket and say, okay, what am I willing to put in here? Am I willing to have a really poor diet? That one didn't even get mentioned. Like that, feeds this bucket and fills it up really, really quickly.
Really fast, yeah.
So the beautiful thing about this whole concept is that you can control a large amount of what goes into that bucket. Yes, we all have stress. Are you using tools to manage that stress? Yes, we all have to eat. What are you eating? Are you going to be eating that will help like let some of that out of the bucket, or are you going to be piling more on? So it really is, a lot of this is within our control. You can't control the bug that you're going to pick up when you're traveling. You kind of almost have to know that that's going to happen when you travel.
It's true.
Depending on where you're going.
Yeah.
Can't get around it.
They're not fun.
Flashbacks to,
to
Thailand. Woo! Yeah. So
yeah.
we want to work on the things that are within our control and let go of the things that are not in our control, so that we can be happier and more sane.
Ooh, yeah. That's what we all need, is a little more sanity. So I think there's some fun. I need to take a quick break. So I want to say KUHS streaming live here in Denver. So if you are not on the KUHS website right now, you can go to KUHSdenver.com, where they stream live and are amazing. We are hitting, I don't know, I haven't gotten numbers in a month or so, but I know we were hitting almost 100,000 people. So yay.
Cool.
Amazing. So good stuff. This is a great station, and we thank Henry for allowing us to come and play in his office.
Thank you, Henry.
And so, just on cue, he put up Rightful for us. So Rightful is an amazing company. They are so good at what they do. They are a pain management company. They're a natural supplement. They have they're based in some coconut milk, but they're turmeric based. They've got a little bit of CBD. They have a morning supplement and then an evening supplement. It tastes good. And it really, really helps with lots of things. The goal, though, is pain management. And so we always want to understand where pain's coming from. We don't want to cover up the pain, even if it's with a supplement, right? But when we have people who go to pain management clinics, it's usually because there's something that is going on that can't always be fixed by nutrition, right? So I say this a lot, but I have a husband who's got a fused ankle. That can't be fixed by nutrition. I wish it could. But there's some pain there. And so, this product is being used in pain management clinics because it works so well. And so it's great for focus, it's great for sleep. I love it, and it's good stuff. So you can go to rightful.com, put in the code TLN20, and get your discount. Try it. You'll love it. Okay. So I want to get into some things that are maybe a little more, maybe people have heard of and maybe not, and specifically I'm thinking the vagal nerve.
Ooh. I love this nerve.
So there's what is called the gut-brain axis. Some will call, like Dr. Lynn and Dr. Sam call it the brain-gut axis. I'm like, no, you're backwards.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're backwards.
Let's be clear, it's gut-brain. There are 9 times more signaling going from gut to brain than brain to gut. So for every signal being sent from the brain to the gut, there's 9 going from the gut to the brain.
It's a great little stat. I love that.
We'll just clear that up real quick. Not that it really matters.
But it is really important. So it's an understanding that what's going on in the gut, when we talked about it earlier, we're talking about the brain fog and the fatigue and the anxiety and the depression, and these things are going on here. It very well could be stemming from the gut, because that vagal nerve, the vagus nerve, is what connects the gut to the brain and the brain to the gut. And so it can cause physical issues. So we talk about things like lack of motility, which is, just your intestines not moving, right? So they have to move while we're digesting food, and they're moving food through the tract, but it also has to be able to move in between meals, which is why it's good it's for most people, not for everybody. I say it's better to not snack, because you do breakfast. If you do breakfast, not everybody has to. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you have that in between time where those is called the motor, what is it called? Migrating motor complex.
Yeah.
But it's there to move stuff out, debris, bacteria, yeast, things that aren't supposed to be there. It's a cleaning.
Right. It's like it's sweeping. Think about like a big cafeteria. Like they don't sweep while everyone's running around at lunchtime. They wait till lunch is over and then they can sweep up and clean. So it needs to be done. And like you said, if you're snacking, that's not going to be happening.
It's not. And so I want to take into consideration, there are some people, I have a client who is very active, very tall, very lean. And there was a time, I don't know if it's as much the case now, but she was going through some healing and some things, and she needed to eat regularly. And so I think that there are times when it's maybe necessary. But I do believe for most of us who are not as active, we sit a lot, get a standing desk. I think that understanding that taking that time and allowing the emptiness. And that's kind of what I feel like is the best way to describe it, is allow the emptiness. Be okay with some gurgling. It happens. And
loud
then,
gurgling for me.
I know, mine just did right now. I'm like, oh, I'm working. Take that break. And I'm also not saying everybody has to eat breakfast. I think that we are in a place where we understand that some people do and some people don't, and we're all different. We're all unique, and we're all beautiful, and nobody judges as long as you're doing things properly and with good knowledge, and taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. And I think it's good and okay to play and try skipping breakfast for like a week and see what happens. I have patients who thought they could never go without, a meal, especially breakfast, and they've noticed that if they eat breakfast, they are hungry through the whole day, and they're snacking and their digestive issues usually will flare. But if they don't eat breakfast, they're hardly ever hungry, and then they have their 2 meals, and that's it, and they feel much better. I have a handful of people who've noticed that. And I go through phases all the time. You want breakfast? Okay, eat breakfast. And then I go through many phases where I don't, or I'll just have bone broth, and I feel just lighter and more comfortable, even if I'm having. Well, if I'm having breakfast, I'm only having a healthy breakfast. But even if it is a healthy breakfast, sometimes it's just, all the blood flow goes to the gut to digest, and it can leave some people feeling maybe even a little brain foggy. So, and then a total opposite, other people feel like they're completely brain foggy until they get food in their system. So I encourage you guys to play with that. It's really individual, but there's nothing wrong with skipping breakfast and doing a little bit of a break.
I think it's listening to your body. It's really important to listen to your body, because if you're trying to do some intermittent fasting and there's a day where your body's like, I need to eat and I need to eat now, and you don't allow for that, I think that creates problems as well. So I think intermittent fasting is good. I think it's not for everybody. And we veered a little bit, but I think it's an important thing, because there are a lot of fads out there. I mean, a lot of them are good for some people, not for everybody. And so again, that's one of the things that is my goal in my practice, and then with the show and whatever else I do, is helping people understand that they're unique. You are not like anybody else in many, many ways. So just because something works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for you, and vice versa. So you've got to figure out, so experiment, play. Don't put a lot of pressure and stress on your body or yourself, because what happens when you stress and put pressure on yourself, if you're trying to lose weight, you probably won't lose the weight, because it's stressful.
So basically we all just need to take a big breath and chill out and get a poop test. And speaking of the vagus nerve, I want to jump right back to that, because the vagus nerve is this physical connection from the brain to the gut and back and forth. So this nerve is responsible for a lot of things. It has so many things that it's in charge of, but the main thing is it's responsible for the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, what does that mean? You guys might have heard this as the rest and digest. These 2 branches, fight or flight, rest and digest. Most of us are living in this fight or flight. We're really stressed. We're go, go, go. We have all of these things to do, and the vagus nerve is responsible for putting us into that parasympathetic rest and digest mode. And one of the ways that we can actually stimulate that vagus nerve is through really deep belly breathing. So actually taking that big breath and a really slow, longer, deep exhale for even just a few minutes can be really, really helpful. Not to mention how much better you will feel on the level of stress, but it also can really help regulate that parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. You know, there are things that we can a lot of times, you know, when it comes to symptoms, say, okay, that might be vagal tone or lack of vagal tone. You know, sometimes we're not able to swallow pills, right? That could be something. If we have an infection, you know, that can be due to the inability so it's the vagal nerve not working properly, which then motility is not working properly, and things aren't being moved out properly. And so there are things that we can do. So it's the breathing, it's yoga, believe it or not, it's gargling really loud, you know, until it brings tears. It's as gross as it is. It's, to me, it's the easiest one. It's just, I hate it. Yeah. But it's gagging yourself with your toothbrush until you cry, because it makes me cry immediately. I'm like, ooh.
So fun.
It's so fun, but it works. But then there are things like bitters that are, and there are certain herbs, and I can't remember what they are off the top of my head. I don't know if you do, but bitters and certain herbs and spices that can help with increasing motility, which is increasing or strengthening vagal tone. So these are, you know, that's one of the things I have, as I've learned in my practice, when somebody tells me I can't swallow my pills, before I go to something physical going on, I'm thinking H. pylori and I'm thinking vagal tone, because those two things can create a problem with swallowing pills.
It's that downward movement that's not happening, and when that downward motion and sweeping is not happening, this is when you have that, it allows bacteria to grow in places where it really shouldn't. And again, the stool testing will help us see that.
And I think that's a sort of a great segue, because the reason that, you know, again, we do stool testing on every person that comes through the office, because going back to, we need to understand the microbiome, the good and bad. We need to understand the dysfunction and the dysbiosis, which is an overgrowth of good and or bad bugs, which can create problems in and of itself. And so there are things that we can see. So, you know, when we have pathogens, so true pathogenic infection, things that need to be addressed immediately, we see these regularly. So even in people without symptoms, we're seeing it.
Really good point. I had H. pylori and had no idea.
I was shocked.
And it's gone.
Yay!
So, and this can cause lots of problems for people. So I mean, that's one example of something that when it's, because it's very, very common, but when you see that, you need to do something about it. And if I had not done these tests, I would have had no idea. I had not a symptom.
And I think with that said, though, you know, we also look at it and understand, I guess, the amounts. I think for some people, H. pylori is a natural part of the gut, but somehow it got out of control. And that's what we want to look at and what we want to understand. And hers was significantly high. When she sent it to me, I was like, whoa, that's shocking, because Dr. Amber's just really healthy. And you're like, how does that happen?
I was offended.
I know.
I was like, excuse me.
This is my body.
Do you know how hard I try?
Not good.
But that goes back to, like, you can't control where you pick up these things, you know? You just, there are certain things that are out of your control. So when you do these tests, it gives you insight into what is going on, and then you can actually take control back.
Yeah, and you know, we look at things like, so we're looking at the microbiome, and we're looking at taking probiotics. You know, everybody's like, I need to take a probiotic, and yes, maybe so, but we are also supposed to have our own. We should eat good prebiotics, which are foods that feed the bacteria. But the things that we need to understand is, we're having symptoms, whatever the symptoms are, you can have an overgrowth of good bugs. They're called commensal bugs. And so if you happen to take a probiotic that has some of these good bugs in it that are good for a lot of people, but you already are in excess, that can create more of a problem as well.
Yes.
So, you know, kind of takes us, you know, a little bit to supplementation, which we love. Supplementation, I believe in many, many cases, is very necessary for a period of time. neither one of us wants people on lifelong supplements, $500 a month of supplements. It makes no sense. We want you on the minimal amount of supplements that you need, which may include a probiotic, but it may not. So understanding, again, testing is what is the key to us understanding what it is. It's not an exact science, but it helps us get as close as we possibly can to helping whoever we're helping.
Yeah, and Nikki brings up a really good point here about supplements, and obviously she's a fan. That's the medicine, right? So one thing that I actually just sent out an email venting about this whole thing is that stores are full of supplements.
Oh man.
Okay, they're everywhere, and I'm sure this isn't to shame you. I'm sure you have supplements at home that you got at Whole Foods or GNC or somewhere online that you thought, oh, this is
Don't buy online.
Cheap. Yeah.
Don't buy online.
This is a really bad idea.
Yeah.
So there are certain companies, really good companies, that supply pharmaceutical grade supplements to practitioners only for a reason. And they believe in the power of prescribing supplements correctly. Everyone and their mom and their mom's mom are taking probiotics. And as Nikki just pointed out, that is not necessarily okay. That could be causing a lot of problems for a lot of people. And not that we're against probiotics, but let's look at what kind of probiotics you need. Do you even need a probiotic? Would you be better off with just prebiotics? So I just really encourage you that if you feel like you need a supplement, you need to see somebody who can prescribe appropriately. Because if you just go to the store and pull, peppermint off the shelf because you heard it was good for stomach aches, who knows what's going to happen? It's expensive urine. You're wasting a lot of money when you do this. My rant is over.
No, it's good, and it's important, and it's a part of my rant too, because so many people buy off of Amazon and eBay, or these small companies that just happen to be pop-up online supplement companies that nobody knows anything about. And I want to believe that they have everybody's best interest at heart, but I don't know that.
Here's the thing. They may not. I hope they do too, but let me tell you this, going back to the pharmaceutical grade supplements that we use, only 3% of supplements are of that kind of value. Only 3%. So what does that mean? That means that the other 97% of supplements can have dyes, fillers, other excipients that just shouldn't even be there. And these can be, they can be toxic.
They can be toxic. They can be damaging. You got to know what's in them. And when it comes to Amazon and eBay, some of these companies have bought their own products off of Amazon and eBay and then retested them, and they are not the same. They're expired. And if I were to tell you to go get something off of Amazon for a specific reason, and you get it, and it hurts you, what does that say about me? Because it doesn't say anything about Amazon, because you just bought what I told you to get.
Right.
But it's been shown. They've got, and I say this because I think it's important. There's some shown that there was sawdust in capsules. Yeah, and so when you think about that, again, this is where you dig. Okay, so sawdust, we've eaten wood before for whatever reason, right? Who hasn't? But think about, where does the wood come from? Was it on a deck that was full of paint and stain and primer? And was it, all of these, wood is so toxic.
And why is it there?
Why? Well, yes, of course. Why is it there,
obvious
period?
Question.
But it could be that it's some sawdust that was from building a home. Right? Or whatever it might be. And that's really scary, because I can't imagine the toxic nastiness that goes on to this wood in order for it a home to be there, to stand for, man, my words, to stand for 100 years or whatever it is, even longer.
Yeah. So
don't, don't just
I could keep going, but I felt like it was a good
time to stop.
There
are some decent mainstream companies, and that's fine, but you got to know what you need. And why waste money? That's the thing.
Right. Trying to save money actually costs you money. That's really what it comes down to.
True. Okay, so with that said, real quick, we have Zymogen. So Zymogen is another amazing company you will not find on eBay or Amazon because they'll shut them down. Yep. So, which is a good thing because they are really, really careful and particular about their quality control, the ingredients that they put in their supplements. So I love this. I love I5. It's a great immune booster. It's a really good product. But they've got a wide variety of products where we talked about Rightful a little while ago. Rightful, they're pretty focused, right, on pain management. Zymogen, Whole Scripts is the company that you order through for Zymogen. But they have, supplements for different organ systems. But again, as good as they are, if you don't know what you need, you don't want to waste your money. So you can go online, you can go to my website, and you can click the button that says Whole Scripts, and you can look through all of their stuff. But just be aware that you may or may not need what you're looking at. So, but they're an amazing company.
They are. I second that.
Yes. Cool. So I think I want to get a little bit into some of these different infections that we deal with on a pretty regular basis. We've got, we hear about IBS, we hear about IBD, so there's irritable bowel syndrome versus irritable bowel disease. We have GERD, heartburn, we've got SIBO and SIFO, so SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and then small intestinal fungal overgrowth. We have this CFIDS, which is chronic fatigue immune disorder syndrome, which is a big one.
It's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. So these are things that we see constantly, and they're nasty.
They really are. They cause a lot of problems for a lot of people.
They do. It's a tough one. And so I think, there are a couple of points specifically about SIBO. And I think SIFO may have has a lot of the same symptoms, but you would go about eliminating it differently if it's, bacterial versus fungal. But things to understand about something like SIBO is it affects more than just the gut. So it goes outside of that. It conjugates or it binds up bile. So if it's doing that, which is what helps you to break down your fats and utilize your fats, which helps you utilize your fat-soluble nutrients, A, D, E, K, CoQ10. Those things are fat-soluble nutrients. You have to have fat in the diet. And if you're not breaking it down properly, you're not utilizing it, then you're probably going to be deficient in your fat-soluble vitamins. Dealing with COVID right now, everybody's deficient in vitamin D. Everybody's deficient in it anyway. But you don't want to be deficient in vitamin D right now because that is a key, or it is one of the keys to making sure that you move through COVID as smoothly as possible. You've got to have a robust immune system.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What else was I? Oh, restless leg syndrome can be from a gut infection, from SIBO.
I've seen this a lot with SIBO.
Have you?
It's odd. Yeah. But it's definitely a thing.
It is a thing.
There's a correlation between the two for sure.
It can also be neurological, but and it can be multiple things. But it's one of those things. If you're dealing with restless leg, maybe you go, oh, I might need to go get a poop test.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but there are lots of things. There's SIBO causes. So, if you've ever heard of the food baby, or you think that you look pregnant and you're not, like I look 6 months pregnant. Why do I look 6 months pregnant? Well, a lot of times that can be a key indicator for SIBO.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Or some food sensitivities. Yeah. Question, I want to ask you what your viewpoint is on testing for SIBO. Are you a fan? Are you not a fan? Are you kind of in the middle? What do you think?
Yeah.
There's controversy around
this.
So this is why I'm asking.
There is, and it's a great question, and she knows what I'm going to say. But every time to back it up, when I run these labs, virtually every time I'm consulting with a clinician on staff, so I know that what I'm seeing is right and that we are working for this particular client. well. And it's not just me, it's multiple people who are on board making sure that we have the right protocol for this client. So I like to say that, you know, my clients work with a team, although they just kind of interact with me and my health coach, right? But so lots of times when we find somebody who's dealing with SIBO, and it can show up in stool, but it is not diagnostic. These tests are not diagnostic for diseases, but they are big time indicators, right? So it can lead to a lot of things, you know. These infections can trigger autoimmune diseases, right? So there can be some pretty nasty little buggers in here. But from the time I started really working with SIBO, which has been several years ago, I have talked with every clinician that I can, and I'm like, do you test? Because there is a hydrogen breath test and a methane breath test. Breath test. And but then if you can see in the stool, I'm like, why would you, you know, is that sufficient? What happens when you do these breath tests, and they're done everywhere, and I'm not knocking them. Lots of people do these tests, and lots of people want to see that the results, well, what the results are. I mean, that's why we test, right? The accuracy is marginal at best. I think it's about 60% accurate. And so if somebody comes to me and I do a breath test and it comes back negative, but they actually do have SIBO, what is their motivation for doing a SIBO protocol? Or if it comes back positive and they're actually negative, then we're going after the wrong thing. So, and I had this discussion with this this lab right here last week, and I asked her, because she was talking about, you know, you may want to do some breath testing, and I said, okay, let's talk about that. I want to know your opinion. I have asked over the years every time, and she said, I do not breath test. And so the hope is, or what we're hoping for when it comes to something like SIBO, is we're looking at symptoms, we're looking at things that are, and so bear in mind, I don't diagnose, these tests don't diagnose necessarily, but we can do things that can be sort of diagnostic in nature. And so doing something like what's called a low FODMAP diet, and so FODMAP is an acronym for very long starches in foods. I'm not even going to go into it right now. But if we put somebody on a low FODMAP diet, it can essentially, and they feel better, and these are all healthy foods. We want people to eat these foods. But if they're creating symptoms, then it allows us to say, okay, I've got a really good idea of what's going on here, and we're going to go after it. And more times than not, it works.
Yeah. Great answer.
So you agree, though?
I do. You know, I've heard. I don't breath test, but a lot of times people will bring in their breath tests, and I'll be like, okay, here, like we can use this. But I don't do it for that reason. We don't know how accurate it is, but it's all we have right now. I'm sure that will change in the next, even few years. But I would say within 5 years we have better testing. But the problem with the test is, so regardless of how accurate it is, it's only testing hydrogen and methane. And there's other gases that these microbes give off that can be causing this same SIBO situation, and that's not being tested for, and there's no way to test that currently. So yes, I do agree. I don't test. I think about it sometimes, but yeah.
It's hard because we want to have to get the best answers that we can, and I think at this point how we feel about testing and how important it is for our practices and for our clients and patients. But if I don't feel like I'm getting good results, then I think I feel better, and my client will feel better going based off of all of the other information, because you can put the pieces of the puzzle together. There may be a few missing, but that's what happens in life and what happens with the body. There's still so many things that we don't know about the body. We're just putting pieces of the puzzle together as we get the pieces.
Right.
And so I think that most of the time testing is important, and this one showed up with both methane and hydrogen bugs. And she was very specific. She's like, doesn't mean that that's what it is, but she's like, I bet it is. And I said, well, I bet it too. Also, because of the symptoms.
Yeah, you can make a story out of it, but it's not looking at small intestine. So that's just one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. So I think, other things that can create these imbalances and this dysfunction and this dysbiosis, which again is an imbalance of good and bad bugs, or even an imbalance of good bugs where they get too high, right? A lot of us, as we age, we become deficient in hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is necessary, right? It's in the gut, in the stomach, and it starts breaking down foods. It starts breaking down proteins. If you're not breaking down proteins because you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, then that's when people start to say, and think about this, if this is you, meat feels really heavy to me. I don't feel like it moves right. And and it's actually what's happening because you're low in hydrochloric acid, which is typically also what's happening in heartburn.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so what are we given when we have heartburn? We're given an acid blocker. You don't have any acid and you're given an acid blocker. So whether it's an acid blocker like a PPI or Tums, Tums kills me. It's not good. It's not okay. And the calcium in it is not okay. Whole other the rabbit holes.
Yep, they're everywhere.
But if we don't have the hydrochloric acid, or for whatever reason, age, whatever it might be, it's creating deficiencies, and it's creating the inability for you to break down and utilize the nutrients that are in your food. So we have to have that acid. We cannot continue to take these acid blockers and proton pump inhibitors thinking that it's helping our heartburn or our GERD, because most of the times it's not. There are some situations where it has to be, and usually it's a physical situation. There's something that I'm trying to think of. I can't think what it is.
Are you thinking of like Barrett's esophagus?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, that's one where it's probably the risk outweighs, or the benefit of taking the PPI, outweighs the risk. Yeah. But I would say that's probably it. And you can't just jump off of these things. So if anyone's listening who is taking a proton pump inhibitor, acid blocking prescription medication,
or even over the counter.
Right. These things don't, if you've been taking it for a long time, you don't just pop off of them. That's not safe either. You do need to work with your doctor or somebody who knows what they're doing. But with that said, this is, if you have heartburn, GERD, acid reflux, whatever that sensation that you're actually feeling is, even though it feels acidic and it feels burning, it's generally, almost always, we can't say always, but it's generally a problem of acid in the wrong place, not over acid production. Yeah. It is mostly under acid production. And I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but you have to have the little flap that keeps the stomach contents, the acidic stomach contents from coming up into the esophagus has to be a certain pH for that to stay closed. So if there's not enough acid, it can open and allow what acid is there to come up and cause what we know as heartburn.
Yeah. Which can be really uncomfortable, and we get that and we realize that. But I was at the gym the other day, and they were talking about their pregnant wives, a couple of guys talking about their pregnant wives, and they're taking, downing Prilosec and just munching on Tums, and it's like, I don't mean to interrupt. I couldn't help myself. Like, maybe tell them to try Tums. Maybe tell them to try apple cider vinegar. Look at me.
Yeah, it works so well.
But seriously, I see this all the time. Somebody's dealing, they're like, oh, it hurts. I'm like, okay, let's take some apple cider vinegar. And like, whoa, it's better when people believe that it's going to burn. Now, if it does burn, the lining is too thin and it's too much for you. You've got to repair that lining. And so you got to understand what you're dealing with. Right. But apple cider vinegar is from God.
Magic sauce.
It's magic sauce. It is. It's amazing stuff. It's good for so many things.
It really is. It's a great way to break up stagnant food that's not moving through.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hate this, but I think that we have to be finished.
Yep. It's that time.
It is that time. So, see, it wasn't so bad. We didn't just talk about poop.
Right. We should have talked about poop a little bit more, shouldn't we have?
Yeah. So if it's runny, not good. If it doesn't come out, not good. What else is not good? If it's difficult, not good.
Right. And one thing just to mention to end on is that this is not a scary test. Yes, people, and that's why we're trying to take the taboo out of poop and actually doing the poop test itself. Yeah, it's a little weird to poop in a tray, but you're in your own home. A kit is sent directly to you. It's done in the privacy of your own home when you want. It is not that weird. You put it in a bag and you don't ever have to talk to anyone about it.
It's quick and easy.
Except for, who's going to be going over your lab work with you. It's very quick and easy. So, don't let that stop you.
When you talk to somebody like us, when you talk about your poop with us, it's just like you're talking about your food.
True.
It's true. I mean, we talk about it all the time, and which is not for everybody. But again, it's a huge part of our story, and we have to understand it, because whatever is happening there is what's what's going on in here, and we got to know. We got to know.
Yeah.
So okay. With that said, talk about where you are and where you can be found.
Oh.
Besides here.
So my website is vitalitycenter.com, and I'm mostly active on Instagram, but you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Vitality Center Denver.
Man, I need to get better with Instagram. You do well with Instagram.
I don't do well with Facebook.
I don't do well with any of them.
So.
But we're trying, right? I think for the two of us, if we could just sit here and do this all day, which we do probably a lot. This is literally the discussion that we have pretty much all the time. So
it really is.
As you know, if you have watched before, Taste Life Nutrition is my website. It's also all of the social media. You can find us out there. I do a couple of Facebook Lives about dogs. So, one about dogs called Real Raw Health. So if you are curious about raw feeding for your dog, which is the best thing to do for your dog if you love your dog, and we all do. Amber feeds her dogs raw. Let me help. Let us, just watch the Facebook Lives. It's Thursdays, 3 p.m. Mountain Time. So today, so that's every week. This show is every other week on Thursday. Except this next one falls on Thanksgiving, so we'll probably have a replay of something.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I can't believe it's Thanksgiving. Crazy. But reach out. I do Functional Friday with my health coach, first Friday of every month, and so we talk kind of similar stuff. We're talking about functional medicine and functional nutrition and different conditions that we see in practice all of the time. So reach out, go to the website. I have an assessment that you can do for free on the website, and I'll reach out to you personally, and we'll just talk through it and see what you need and what we can do to get you through whatever's going on. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in a month. Wow. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Mwah.